Once again, we have our Virginia Candidate Election Series, where we're talking with candidates that are running for your vote in the Virginia General Assembly. This year, all 140 seats are up for election. And today we have with us candidate and former delegate Alex Askew telling us why you should vote for him for candidate for District 95. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. We'll be right back in just a moment. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. We're so glad that you're joining us here on air as we broadcast from none other than the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. Listen, I hope that you're staying dry. I hope that you are hunkered down, and I hope that everything went well during this time that we had a tropical storm here in the Hampton Roads area, and the storm that affected all of the localities up and down the coast. We pray that everything went well, and that there's any loss of property or anything else, that you will regain it back. So again, our prayers are there for everyone out there that's impacted, and we look forward to moving forward out of this particular storm. Again, we'd like to thank all of our listeners for your support that you have given us over the years and continue to give us as you tune in to this very important show where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. Those of you that are listening to the show, you know that I love this time of the year because it's election season. You know, politics is in my blood, and you guys love it because you're tuning in, you're listening to it. But it also dictates every aspect of our lives. And during this time of the year, I like to have what I call a candidate series. And this is where we bring candidates on air to you to talk with you about issues that are important to you and to the community. And this is important because you have an opportunity to hear straight from them so that you can make a more well-informed decision. So joining us this morning, I have with us a very good friend and someone who's making major strides here in the Hampton Roads area and his name in politics, none other than former House Delegate Alex Askew. Alex, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Eric. How about yourself?
No complaints. Listen, just trying to stay dry like everybody else. But again, we thank you for taking time out to join us and to speak to our listeners.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And, as you stated, I hope everybody got through the weekend okay and everything was safe and everybody's property is okay. And everybody, if it's not, everybody continues to be in our thoughts and our prayers. So absolutely. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. So listen, I want to get right to it. Tell us about the district that you're running in and why you're running for the House of Delegates.
Absolutely. Well, the district makes up about 90% of Virginia Beach with a little bit of Norfolk. So has the Janif Military Circle area, goes north to near Ebenezer, goes east to Independence, everything sort of west of Independence, and down south to near Tallwood High School. It's a pretty expansive district. I was born and raised in the district, and, I'm running, and I've said it before in my previous elections, and I'm going to say it again, to give back to community. They're giving so much to me. I went to elementary school in the district, went to middle school, and I graduated from Tallwood High School and then attended Hampton University. And, I came back in permanently about 2017 to continue my work in progress in the policy space and the political space. And I'm so happy to be running again here to represent my hometown in Richmond.
To the listeners, he did say graduate from Hampton, but, again, it's nothing but love with the Spartan Nation.
Yes, you all got the best of us a couple of weeks ago on the football field. So, I can't really say too much.
Absolutely. When you say that you're running to give back because the community gave so much to you, that sounds very refreshing, especially for what we're experiencing now in Congress with pretty much a deadlock with one party, blocking legislation from passing a spending bill. When you talk about the community gave you back so much, what about the community really poured into the making of who Alex Askew is today?
Absolutely. When I think about my community, I think about my teachers. I think about my mother, my coaches. I was a decent athlete, but not great. But I just think about the folks that just poured so much into me. Right, my orchestra teachers, my chess club teachers, just everybody and every adult that just had a effect, on my life and sort of made me who I am, and I want to continue to do that for our younger folk or even folks my age for, that matter, because I wouldn't be here without, many of them. And when I talk about, running, I, worked on a bunch of campaigns similar to you. I know you have a lot of political experience, right? And, when I first was asked to run or a seat opened up, the former delegate that had the seat and some other folks like, Alex, you're going to run for the seat. I was like, no, I'm not. I like being in the background. I like, getting things done that way and having somebody else be the face. But, after I talked to my pastor and my family and some other folks, they said, hey, you'd be great because you had that experience. You could be the bridge to the policy and the process to your community and the folks that you know and, they trust and respect you. So, it's just I wouldn't be here without my community, right? And I wouldn't be here without Hammer Roads.
Now, you mentioned orchestra. What instrument did you play?
Played the violin.
Really?
I wasn't great at that either, but I did play from middle school into high school.
Okay. Well, look, same here. I played violin in middle school, high school, and I was first violin for a couple of years, by the way. But
all right, yeah, you're a lot better than me. I was in the front, but in the second violin section. So
there you go. Look, you need the second violin because they give the beat, the tip on the back. So it's all good. Alex, you mentioned the teachers. When I asked you what part of the community gave you back so much, you said teachers. What is it about education? Well, first of all, we know that teachers are really, really been tasked with a lot, especially these last 4 or 5 years, whether it be from national side to during COVID, where you had now this attack on education, attack on teachers, these massive protests on school board meetings. And it was interesting because you and I both know school board meetings, that's probably the least attended, public meetings out there, but right. It was standing room only, in those meetings. And it wasn't for the upbuilding schools, but really of attacking a lot of the policies that are there. And of course, the attack on history and African-American history and the like. What is your plan for teachers and moving forward to help them to really do what they love to do and because again, teaching is one of the greatest professions that we have, because without our teachers, you, me, none of us would be where we are.
You're absolutely right with that, Eric. And my mother was an educator, my sister, more than a few of my aunts, my cousins. I have a family full of educators. My grandfather taught in the school system in North Carolina. And I think first and foremost, we need to pay our teachers more, right? They're truly undervalued, right? They're the basis of, our community. To your point, I wouldn't be here without educators. But it's really becoming increasingly unfortunate that the school board meetings and the school board in general are the front line of the Republicans' culture war, right? We need to depoliticize, our school board and our education and really focus on, our children. We went through this pandemic, right? And this is one thing we both can agree on, both Republicans and Democrats. There was money loss. But how do we fix that, right? We might have different ideas, right, where the Republicans are looking to defund public schools, right? I think the Democrats and myself are looking to really increase, like I said, teacher pay and fully fund our public school system. You can look at the disparity, across our different school systems, in our region, right? You look at Virginia Beach or Chesapeake, and you look at school systems, across other places. They're not as funded. And I think we need to look at, how we fund our schools and look to the process, how we rebuild our schools, because it's tough to learn when there's no AC or there's no heat and tiles are falling down on our kids, or they can't get to their schools because there's flooding out front and there's just old infrastructure. So, there's no magic wand, and I know it's going to have to go through the process of appropriations. But, when we get back to the General Assembly and when the Democrats take back the majority, I know one of our main focuses to make sure we appropriate funds to our public school systems and, continue to increase teacher pay to bring us up to at least, right, minimum national average. But, I want to focus on bringing it above the national average, because in Virginia we have a great public school system in the Commonwealth, but we didn't make sure we pay our teachers adequately.
Absolutely. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville, and you're joining us for our 2023 election series where we talk with candidates and we bring them to you to talk about issues important to you. Today we have with us a good friend of mine and one of the rising stars here in Hampton Roads and in Virginia, Alex Askew. Alex, I introduced you earlier as former delegate. I want you to talk a little bit about of your time in the House, your first time, what you learned during that experience, and what galvanized you to running in, and pretty much what will you take with you this time to do it better?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, I decided to run it in because the job's not done. All right. I think one of the biggest things we had the majority, right, in both the House, the Senate, and we had the governor's pen, right, to sign these bills. So it was a great time, right? I talk to some of my former colleagues now, and they tell me all the time it was so much better serving, in the majority, right? And before that, there was over 20 years where we didn't have the majority, right? So it was a great time. It is unfortunate that we lost it. I think we were a total maybe 1,000 votes, maybe close to 2,000 votes away from taking it back. My race in particular in the old seat, I lost my race in a recount by 115 votes out of around 30,000 votes, right? So, and I say this all the time, and I go around and I tell them, I was like, don't tell me every vote doesn't count, because it truly does. And I think some of those races this year are going to be similarly close, right? Mine's not as much because I'm fortunate enough not to have an opponent because the Republicans didn't have anybody or didn't put anybody against me in the race. But I do tell folks that I do have an opponent, and that's apathy, right? We need to make sure that folks get out and vote, make sure their voice is heard, and make sure they cast their ballot for hopefully Democrats. But, sometimes I'm just happy that people vote, right, and they don't sit out on the sideline.
Absolutely. I want to segue to, you mentioned something about voting, the importance of voting. Now, early voting has started here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you mentioned serving in a majority. During that time period that you were in the House, the Democrats had a majority, and they passed what I've called on this show and other platforms good common sense legislation, public policy. When the Democrats extended an open access to the ballot box for all Virginians, no matter what persuasion, both political, ethnicity, or whatever the case may be, or even age, you could vote now 45 days before the election. You can also vote on Election Day and on Saturday, the 2 Saturdays leading up to the election, and yes. And mail-in ballots. To me, it just made sense that this was the way to go. Tell us a little bit about your view on early voting and what you did just last week as it relates to early voting.
Yes, absolutely. So I voted on the first day of early voting to make sure my voice was heard. Prior to the Democrats having the majority of as we call it, the trifecta, Virginia was one of the hardest states to vote in. With the Democratic majority, we made it one of the easiest of top 50 states or top 25 states, to vote in, right? And, if you look at the past couple elections, the early voting numbers really took Democrats over the top. It's interesting when you see our governor currently, really, and some of the Republicans pushing, the early voting because they saw, what effect it had and how it affected some of the races and the results of the campaign, right? So I really push everyone to, go to the ballot box, vote early, right? Election Day is great. I know a lot of folks have been voting on Election Day a long time, but, just make sure your voice is heard. If you have the time to go, whether it's the City Hall in Norfolk or the registrar down in Building 14 in Virginia Beach, go make sure your voice is heard. Any of the Saturdays that you mentioned. If you need more information, go to iwillvote.com or visit your local registrar's website to get the information and the times and the dates where they're open. But it just still remains interesting to me that some folks that are running just in Norfolk, right, are talking about how they want to take us back, right, take us back to just one day of voting and remove all the dates of early voting. So it's when folks want to start taking stuff back, that means it's too good. So make sure we take advantage of this opportunity while we have it, and when we retake the majority, we're going to continue to expand access to the ballot box because it shouldn't be hard to vote. It should be easy.
Now, you said when you retake the majority, that's confidence, and you should have confidence. What do you believe the Democrats have that the other party doesn't have that will serve the Commonwealth of Virginia better?
I think common sense messaging, right? Common sense ideas, right? Things that affect everyday people, right? We want to, for example, we want to make sure that prescription drug costs are affordable, right? So folks don't have to make the decision between putting food on the table or buying prescription drugs, right? And I want to make sure that folks can afford just their everyday needs, right? I think right now we look at inflation and different things, and folks are working 40 hours a week and unfortunately can't provide for their families, right? So I think we need to look at continue to increase the minimum wage. We increased it when we had the majority, and of course it took a pause, and that conversation got put on the back burner the past couple of years. But when we get back, we need to look at how do we increase the minimum wage faster so folks, just can afford everyday things, afford to put gas in their car, can afford to buy school supplies and school clothes for their kids. Right, so I think those are just one of the many things that we need to focus on. We take back the majority, and I can't go without saying either, because I think this is one of the top issues this year. It's a woman's right to choose. Right, I think Democrats believe that the choice should be between a woman or an individual that's having a child and their health care provider. Right, I don't think that a politician wearing a suit pressing a button should make those decisions. It should be between those individuals that are actually in the room in the clinic and going through the issues and the different things they're going through. So I think those are some of the common sense things that the Democrats are fighting for, and I don't think it's just it's hyper partisan issue. I think it's their everyday things that affect individuals.
Alex, it's been said that all politics is local, and that reigns so true as it relates to an individual running in the House of Delegates. When you're looking at state government, because it's where you live, is your district. What are some of the issues in your district that your voters are facing and that you plan to do about it, especially African American voters?
Absolutely. I think gun violence, right? It's a regional issue, and I think it affects all of us, whether it's in the 95th, 96th, 97th, 100, the first district. I think it's just an issue that affects all of us. When we were in the minority previously, we expanded background checks, did a lot of other things. In the past couple of years, we tried to do some storage things, and we passed the red flag laws in order for guns to be removed from or individuals provided the opportunity to have their guns removed from them when they're going through a mental health crisis. Right, so I just think it's common sense gun issues in order to, move away from, these tragedies that we have in not only our schools but every day in our communities. Right, it's just this senseless acts, of gun violence. But if you come to maybe a more local issue, right, I think it's transit or transportation or traffic. Right, I think we need to continue to invest in our infrastructure here in Hampton Roads. We previously got millions of dollars for Hampton Roads Transit, right? So folks that might not be able to afford a car, right, can get on the bus and don't have to take, 45 minutes or really longer than that, more than a couple of hours to get from town center to downtown Norfolk for jobs, in their careers. So, there are a lot of localized and a lot of things that folks, talk about as you knock on the doors that they really want assistance and help with, including a few of the issues I answered in the last question. Folks just want more money and are willing to, they're willing to make these sacrifices, but we need to make it easier for them to really afford everyday necessities.
When you talk about afford everyday necessities, the prices are going up, and the government here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we have a surplus of dollars. What is it that you believe? Now, of course, the governor's office believes that they have a plan, that they a better use of the money. But what do you believe should be done with the surplus of funds that we have, given the disrepair that we have in our schools, given the issues that we have in our community? How do you think that money should be better utilized?
Absolutely, and I appreciate that question. I think one is to give more money to our public HBCUs. thought you might like that one.
Absolutely.
But,
well, listen, it's because, hey, we've been underfunded. It's
exactly.
the record is clear. Numbers don't lie. So it is what it is. And we're producing.
Yeah, and even not only our public agencies, but our public schools, right? I know I mentioned and discussed infrastructure last time, but some of our schools are falling apart. Some of our schools are close to 100 years old, right, and have not been renovated, right? Some of them still have coal furnaces, right? So I think infrastructure and really focus on rebuilding some of our schools so our children have environments that are conducive to learning. I think those are the two large things. It's, if you're on 64, in the summertime, right, I'm glad we are, rebuilding and increasing the capacity of the HRBT. But, I think we need to look at expanding 64, the 3 lanes all the way up to Richmond. So the infrastructure projects, just flooding, right? I can't leave this conversation without talking about, flooding. I think we're unfortunately saw, some few instances of flooding in some of our cities this past weekend, but we also know that it floods sometimes on a sunny day and a high tide, right? So I think, looking to work with the federal government and localities to look at how we mitigate flooding, whether it's a coastal resiliency and building some wetlands and repairing wetlands, or really building a seawall in Norfolk.
Mm. When you talk about flooding, there's a project now that's been approved federally to protect most of Norfolk. But of course, there are a couple of areas here in Norfolk, more specifically, area around Norfolk State University and African American communities that really have been left out of this initial plan. What do you believe? And then this brings up an issue of equity, and we're talking about state government and policy itself. What are some of the issues that you believe from your platform that you will champion for our communities when we talk about equity, not just in criminal justice, not just in policing, but in funding, in community, and in uplifting?
Well, absolutely. I appreciate that question, Eric. And when we talk about coastal resiliency and flooding and situations and issues that come along with that, I think we all know a lot of African Americans live in some flood zones, that have a higher propensity to flood. We did pass a bill we did work on a bill when I was in the General Assembly last time to, decrease the funds or take a look at how we help people with flood insurance. A lot of times people, will lose their home if they can't, afford flood insurance. But I think when it comes to, equity, right, I think we need to look at and maybe workforce development. Look at programs that we can work with, the TCC or some of our community colleges or Norfolk State or some of our more diverse serving institutions in order to, provide educational opportunities for students and scholarships and really access to grants in order to, provide students not only just a 4 or 2 year education, but, maybe certificates in MA programs, medical assistant programs, or, we have a future. We have just more than a few miles off the coastline, right? Opportunity to have a whole new industry, right, when it comes to wind turbines. So maybe we can use some of that government money to provide funds in order to push individuals in those type of career opportunities. So it's I just want to work hard and work with other community members and partners to make sure the next generation, wants to stay here, wants to can work here, can raise a family here. It's all affordable and comfortable and has the things that they want in order to live a great life.
Absolutely. You mentioned something at the very end. You talked about jobs, making sure that people have the training and ability to get the high-paying jobs so they can stay here. The district that you're running to represent, you said it's a district that you grew up in and you still live in. That doesn't happen a lot, these days, just to be very honest with you. Of course, I don't live in the neighborhood that I grew up in nor even the state. So what is it about your district, the people that you grew up around, that made you want to say, you know what, I was born here, I was educated here across the water, but I want to stay here and make my mark?
I think, Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads at large is just a special place, right? I see this place being the future of Virginia, right? Whether it's economics, whether it's, of course, we have great military careers and an military industrial complex that really feeds our economy. But I want to continue to provide opportunities where folks can come back, right? Or if they go, students that are in college here want to stay here, right? Have entrepreneurial hubs and build their businesses and just have affordable, housing and affordable healthcare where folks are comfortable, right? It's, a lot of my friends are still here and a lot of folks I grew up with. And, it's just, to me, just a very special place. And, I worked across the East Coast, working on different campaigns and elections. And, I probably could have had some opportunities and I lived in D.C. for a while, Northern Virginia for a while and different places. But I was like, hey, if I can do this here in the beginning to make change, why not do it back home? And something that's really close to my heart and to the people that I truly know and love. So, I'm super happy to be potentially serving back, in my home district and representing the folks that helped raise me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alex, it's been great catching up with you and talking with you. And again, it's so good to see the things that you're doing in the community, even outside of politics, what you do is in the community with your career and also just being present in the community that gave you back so much. Tell our listeners, if they want to get involved with Alex Askew in your community efforts, in your campaign, or they just want to bend your ear, how can they get involved?
So we will be, if you can go to alexaskew.com, we will be knocking on doors for the next few months, reminding folks to vote. If you want to get in contact with me, please email me. Email this. Here's the email address. It's contact@alexaskew.com. So feel free to email us at any time. Someone will be more than likely me. I will be responding. As we move towards legislative session, right, we will be taking bill ideas as well, right? And we pride ourselves on in my office, and we did it prior to really listening to community and taking these bills and these issues and these problems that are happening in our communities and take them to Richmond Divide, fixes, and get them passed in the law. So please email us if you want to get involved, with the campaign, if you have bill ideas, anything of the sort. So please don't be afraid to reach out.
That's alexaskew.com. Make sure you reach out if you want to get involved with the campaign, knocking doors, being a part of the solution there in Virginia Beach and the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's Alex Askew running for delegate in District 95. Alex, thank you so much for joining us here on State of the Water. For those of you that are tuning in and listening to us, continue to listen every Sunday as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University on WNSB Hot 91 in Solar, VA. Until next time, be good, do great, and God bless.